All right, good evening, members of council and administration, and also from our viewing audience. Welcome to our meeting this Tuesday, September the 28th. And I take this opportunity to welcome everyone. On roll call, we have two members of council absent due to personal business, and that's Councillor Jobin and Councillor Dowie. And so we will now call the meeting to order. And I'd like to report that we had no closed meetings scheduled for today. And to the members present, any disclosure of pecuniary interest on the agenda as presented to you this evening? Hearing none, we'll have that duly noted in our minutes. And speaking of the minutes, we have the regular council meeting is September 14th, the public council meeting on Shawnee Road, the ZBA of September 14th, the public council meeting September 14th as well, the ZBA 12305 County Road 34, and our public council meeting September 14th, 2021, 5074 North Talbot Road, and a special council meeting of September the 8th. So if I could have a motion to approve those minutes as presented, Deputy Mayor Joe Bicchetti, Councillor Brian Houston, any errors or omission on those minutes as presented to you this evening? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, the minutes are carried. There is no supplementary agenda items to deal with this evening. So we'll move right on to our delegations, members of council, and we have with us Kevin Maschio, the CPA, and he's a manager of KPMG LLP, and he's here to bring forward and talk about our 2020 audited financial statements.
Good evening, members of council, everybody. As the mayor mentioned, my name is Kevin Mack. I'm a manager at KPMG. So I'm here tonight to bring forward the audited financial statements for the 2020 year. I'd like to open by thanking management for their full cooperation and assistance throughout the audit. So we've completed our audit for the year of 2020. At a high level, our findings report is attached for council's consideration. We're in a position to issue an unmodified audit opinion. Once council approves the statements, we will release our opinion. We don't have any uncorrected adjustments to report as a result of our audit or any control deficiencies. We put an emphasis this year on our audit on looking at controls, given that some remote working arrangements were in place due to COVID-19 during the year. I'm happy to answer that any detailed questions on that or any other findings in our report. We didn't find any control deficiencies as a result of our audit, and we're in a position to issue, as I mentioned. So it's really, at this point, wrapped up pending council's approval. Thank you.
All right. Any questions or comments, members of council, to the auditor? Okay, Tom, you look pretty quiet there. Do you have any comments to bring forward?
Thank you, Mayor. So, yeah, I guess I can say we're pleased with KPMG's work on the audit. We worked in great cooperation, went smoothly as usual. So we thank them. We thank all management as well. They as well participate in the audit. So yeah, it went well this year. We finished a little earlier than last year, so we're happy for that, and we're hoping to move up the audit completion a little earlier even next year.
All right, thank you. So if there's no questions or comments, the motion to receive the report by Mr. Maschio. Yes, Councillor Tonio, Councillor Altenhoff. No further questions. Yeah, go ahead. Both Councillor Altenhoff followed by Councillor Houston. Oh, yeah, I'm mute.
Excuse me, I just wanted to point out that Ms. Moy wanted to grab your attention, Mr. Mayor. Sorry.
Oh.
My apologies. Yeah, Your Worship.
I am sorry.
If we can have more than just a motion to receive the audit findings report, if we could also include in that motion that the consolidated financial statements of the corporation of the town of Tecumseh year ended December 31st, 2020 be approved.
Yes, yes. Thank you for clearing that. Are we okay with the mover and seconder? Yep, it's all good. Councilor Houston.
Through you, your worship, my hand was up as well, just because I saw Laura
Oh,
wanting to speak, so.
I don't know why I couldn't see her, but she's in the bottom left-hand corner for me, and maybe that's why. Sorry about that, but anyway, okay, it's been brought forward to approve the financial statements. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, our next delegation is Mr. Paul Bezaire. He's one of the partners at Bezaire Partners, Urban Planners, Landscape Architects, and is here to present the strategic master plan for parks and recreation. And Mr. Anthony, if you want to, if you've got any opening comments.
Yes, if I may, Mayor McNamara, members of council. Before I introduce Paul and his team, I just wanted to review a couple items. And first, the purpose of the Parks and Rec Strategic Master Plan is to provide the community with a long-range planning document that helps guide investment in the town's parks, recreation, trails, and sports systems. The document assists administration and council with annual budgeting, future planning, preparation of development charge studies, and is a tool to help implement other town master plans and guiding documents. The plan ensures parks, recreation, trails, and sports services keep pace with the town's population growth, emerging interests, and provide Tecumseh residents with choices to be active for life. Keeping pace and reviewing the plan is critical to addressing the ongoing needs of an expanding and evolving community. As the number of components of the original plan have been achieved, it's important to review the plan periodically to explore the new demands that have surfaced, understanding the community's needs and desires, and measures existing parks and facilities against established benchmarks. This document that you will be receiving tonight, and the presentation that Mr. Bezaire is making, is completed through the review process. This is not meant to replace the existing master plan, but is to be used as a tool to augment the actual 2010 report. It is suggested further that a complete new master plan be undertaken sometime in approximately a 5-year period. I'll provide a brief description of the reports and then I will leave it to Mr. Bezaire to provide a more detailed review in his PowerPoint presentation this evening. At the end of the presentation, both Paul, myself, and any of our staff are here to answer any questions. So as part of the review, Bezaire Partners first prepared a parks inventory based on existing conditions of each park, evaluated individual assets for replacement costs and length of remaining service. This document was a request of administration to assist with future life cycle planning and will be a tool that we also can use with our finance department. The second report is the findings from community consultation. The third report is a benchmarking and review of the recommendations from the 2010 master plan. And finally, the final report summarizes the 3 reports, including summarizing recommendations not yet accomplished in the 2010 report, and also provides some new recommendations from the consultation process. At this time, I would like to make a few introductions and a couple of thank yous for the work that was done on this report. So certainly Paul Bezaire is here this evening, and I'm not sure if his brother Jerry is with him, but they are from Bezaire and Partners, change of name from the original contract. Also, I'd like to acknowledge the work that was undertaken by our staff team. Carrie Rice, the manager of special projects, Brett Palmer, Casey Colthurst. From Public Works, we had Phil Bartneck have some input, and as well through the planning department, we had Brian, Chad, and Enrico. There's also some behind the scenes. We had Jamie Kell doing some mapping, and so there was a wide range of staff that were involved with the documents that you received tonight. So I will now turn the presentation over to Paul, and we'll, again, as I say, we'll be open to questions when the presentation is finished.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anthony.
Okay, thank you very much. Paul sort of outlined what the report is about tonight. I want to just reiterate that this is not a parks master plan. This is a review of the 2010 Parks Master Plan. So you might view it as an update more than anything. Slide. There are 4 reports, and I'm not going to go over those again because Paul just did, but there's there's 4 volumes and each one has a specific purpose as Paul laid them out. Slide. The first report was an inventory of all of the parks and trails, and including an evaluation of them. And we basically visited and walked every park. We visited every trail, and we did a complete inventory and evaluation of all of the elements that are in the park, including a photograph record of what's there at this point. In the community consultation, we essentially held 2 public open houses, one at the north end of the town, one at the south. We had some stakeholder interviews, and we had an online survey. The online survey was also available in hard copy at the open houses. Slide. The response to the, takes back once more. Yeah, there we go. The response to the public consultation was relatively good. We had 83 people attend the open houses. We had a chance to interview the mayor, council, and the CAO, and several members of the administration. And we had 9 stakeholder groups representing various aspects of the community, various sports clubs and that sort of thing, that we had individual interview sessions with as well. Slide. The findings of the community consultation were very good. There's a very high level of satisfaction in the town with the parks and recreation system. They did note that there's a need for trails and natural areas, splash pads, trees, and there's some need for some artificial turf on the sports fields to make them more playable. There was also a need for additional baseball and soccer facilities, but quite frankly, those didn't play themselves out when we did the benchmarking analysis. So while there was a need expressed, they didn't really show. Respondents were set up to the survey were either satisfied or very satisfied with the park's facilities, 86%. 89% were satisfied or very satisfied with the maintenance of the parks. With the 96% understand the importance of well-developed and maintained parks. 54% are satisfied with their access to nature in the town. 50% with access to trails. And 91% were satisfied or very satisfied with the condition of the sports fields. Those, by any stretch of the imagination, are very good numbers and numbers that Tecumseh should be proud of. Slide. Next. In looking at the 2010 report, we needed to look at the population projections. And we looked at 3 sources. The 2010 master plan itself was one source. In 2019, you had a development charges report done by Watson. We looked at those projections, and also your new the Tecumseh official plan, the one you just passed. The projections in the 2010 plan were 24,000 people as of 2010, and then there's other numbers there for 2016 and 2029. But when we look at it and we compare it out, we find that the projections in the 2010 plan were really optimistic. For example, by 2016, there was 1,000 less than predicted in the 2010 Parks Master Plan, 1,000 less people. By 2029, we now know that there will be 5,500 to 6,800, depending on which report you look at, less than predicted in the 2010 Parks Master Plan. By 2039, we're now looking at 350 less than what actually was predicted for 2029, so 10 years earlier. So the 2010 projections were really overly optimistic. That plays into the master plan by skewing the benchmarking. So in other words, they would come up with different quantities of parkland and different numbers of facilities than would otherwise be the case. We now know that the full build out for the town, with the point at which it reaches its maximum population, is 49,093 people, and that's a significant number for the calculations as well. Slide. The original Parks Master Plan has categories of parkland, and it utilizes specialized parks, neighborhood parks, and community parks. We thought that was sort of odd and perhaps not quite expanded enough to satisfy the situation in Tecumseh. Slide. And so we've recommended the addition of 2 additional classifications. A parkette is a small park up to 1 hectare in size. It serves a relatively small service radius, so 200 to 450 meters. And it's pretty sparsely appointed. It might have some seating, a bench. It would have some sort of a sign to identify the park. And it might have some tree planting and that sort of thing, but it wouldn't have much else. Slide. At the other end of the scale, a regional park is a park that's over 10 hectares in size. It services not only the town, but the region, even reaching outside the town. It would have a number of facilities, seating, identification, a playground, open play area, a tournament facility, and it would have something in the park that would be of regional interest. And that might include, for example, a tournament facility for baseball or for soccer, something that teams would come to from outside the area. And so a regional park is a new classification that we've added as well. Slide. Park provisioning is when we calculate the amount of hectares of land that's used. Slide. Essentially, what we do is we start with a standard of number of hectares per 1,000 people. This first column essentially shows that the standard we've adopted is 6.5 hectares per 1,000 people overall parkland. And that consists of 2 hectares of regional, 1.5 hectares of community, some neighborhood, and you can see down the column what it consists of, but 6.5 total hectares. If we apply the population from 2021 to that, using that number, we see that the required amount of parkland for the town is 156 hectares, and you have about 145. Next. If we take the population projection that we now know from 2031, the demand rises a bit to 168 hectares, and of course, you still have the same amount of parkland. Next. However, this particular plan includes some recommended acquisitions. There's a couple community parks and a few neighborhood parks. And when we factor in the acreages for those particular acquisitions that are planned, what we end up with is a much better balanced situation. So in terms of regional parks, we would have provided 45 hectares compared to the required area of 51. So we're short 6 hectares. Community parks, 37 against a requirement of 38. So we're short only 1.4 hectares, pretty close. Neighborhood parks, 23 compared to 25. We're short just under 3 hectares. We actually have a surplus in specialized parks, just under 10 hectares there. And in terms of the parkettes, which the requirement is very low, we're less than a hectare off of the standard. Overall, in the whole system, we're within 1.5 hectares of where we need to be based on the 2031 population projections. And that means that as of when we make these acquisitions, we'll actually be on target in terms of the amount of parkland we have for the town. Slide.
Just before you move on, Mr. Bezier, just
Sure.
go back to that on that slide. As the community grows, obviously as subdivisions are being developed in that, and parkland is added to those subdivisions. Was that any thought or included into the expansion of the land base or requirement? Was that based on that decision, or
we know some of that. So the Parks Master Plan includes 2 community parks that are, one is in the north in the Tecumseh hamlet, one is in the south. And there's 4 neighborhood parks that are sort of it's described at each corner of the hamlet. And so those are included, and we don't know where they are going to be necessarily, or how big they'll be. So I've used average park areas to calculate that, but we come up with 21 hectares of additional parkland that will be added over time. There was also 1 parkette that we know of that was in a subdivision plan that's being added, and we've included that at a very small size. However, we don't know what might come forward for subdivisions that we have no record of.
Okay.
And so there could be additional parkland that will flow from those subdivisions that we don't, that's not included in the calculations.
So this basically gives us kind of a benchmark of what we should try to acquire in parkland as the community grows or new subdivisions are being brought in.
Exactly right. Exactly. That's the key.
Your worship, sorry, just on that point, excuse me, through you. I'm assuming with these points that you've raised, Mr. Becerre, could we communicate this to planning so that, for example, on the Parkette side, where there's a bit of a shortfall, they can kind of plan accordingly?
Yeah, planning has certainly reviewed this, and I've had several meetings with Brian and Chad, and so they're right up to speed on what this is saying. Yeah, they've had input into it. In fact, yeah.
As long as there's that communication across the departments, this obviously could assist everyone. Thank you.
Okay.
I apologize for interrupting.
Slide. Using the same sort of idea, using the same sort of idea, we can look at the facilities within a park. So now we're not looking at parkland anymore, we're looking at the facilities. And I know this one's a little hard to see because it's small, but it includes a laundry list of facilities: baseball court, tennis courts, pickleball courts, baseball diamonds, that sort of thing. And we use the same sort of philosophy. There's a standard set up in terms of the amount of basketball courts per one per 5,000 people is sort of the standard. The first column there, we get the arrow up. There we go. It shows what that standard is. It also shows how many we actually have in the town. So there's 11 in the town. The next section shows the projections for the 2021 population, the 2031 population, and then at full build out. That's how the requirement will increase over that time. And the last set of columns is whether or not we have enough of that particular facility or we're short. The yellow highlights along the right-hand side. Slide. There we go. And show that the areas where there's a deficiency, and those include sand volleyball, some soccer fields. But if you look, if you look at that last column, full build-out column, that's when most of the deficiencies show up. We don't have a lot of deficiencies until we get to full build-out of the town. So that currently there's very few shortages. At 2031, there's very few shortages. There's a couple of facilities. And when it just starts to show up is when we reach maximum population, and that's a long ways off. So really, in terms of a number of facilities, again, you're in pretty good shape. You're in pretty good condition. Slide. Just to summarize that particular chart, the number of basketball courts in the municipality is adequate both now and through to build out. Tennis courts, pickleball courts, and hard surface play areas are adequate through the 10-year forecast, but will be deficient at build out. So we're good for now. And now that includes the pickleball courts that are currently being constructed in the town. Sand volleyball courts are deficient at present. However, sand volleyball is very much driven by location, and an opportunity may present itself in the future. And that certainly is happening, because in Maidstone at the community center there, where you're going to be adopting that facility, there are some sand volleyball courts at that facility that will come into the system. Rectangular fields, primarily soccer, are inadequate supply until the population reaches full build out. Slide. Diamond fields, that's baseball diamonds, are inadequate supply until the population reaches full build out. There's an indication that you could use more skateboard parks. And when we talk about skateboard parks, we're not talking the facility like you have now. That's a major, regional facility. We're talking smaller facilities that would satisfy a neighborhood demand. So you have demand for additional skateboard parks and splash pads throughout the town. And lastly, the number of playground structures, dog parks, outdoor pools, and disc golf are adequate, with no requirement for additional facilities until beyond 10 years. So from a standpoint of facilities, you're in pretty good shape. Slide. Next. So the last thing we did in report 3 is we looked at the recommendations that were included in the 2010 plan. And we went down and we looked at each one and we classified each one as either being complete. So in other words, that recommendation has been satisfied. Future, meaning we're going to, it's still to be done. Approved, so it's been adopted by the town either as a procedure or a policy. So we don't really have to worry it anymore because it's become standard for the town. Ongoing or underway and no further action. So it's sort of being abandoned. We went down and looked at every recommendation and we classified it based on that criteria. Slide. And we pulled those particular recommendations that rose to the top as still being relevant and still being outstanding into report number 4. Next. This first slide shows the recommendations that are left over from the 2010 report that are being brought into the as being relevant today. The first one is to establish a community park in the park's central district, and that one is shown in your official plan. And there's a map in the park's master plan actually that shows that. So establish a community park in what's referred to as the park's central district. That's a term from the old parks master plan. Secondly, establish a community park in the park's rural district. That's the area down to the south part of the town. And again, that's an area which is mapped and identified in the master plan. Acquire parkland in each quadrant of the Tecumseh hamlet. So there's 4 neighborhood parks to be established there. Develop a multi-use pathway or sidewalk linking existing and new parks. Work with IRCA as lead to undertake a program of education and management with existing and future schools near McAuliffe Woods. That's still is to be done. Enter into discussions to optimize the use of off-road pathways through Ontario hydro corridors. There certainly is demand for additional trails. And the same for existing surplus rail lines. Those are certainly opportunities for trails that you should be looking at. Work with IRCA to establish a walking and hiking trail system in Fairplay Woods, including signage and related development, related improvements. And by 2021, undertake a forest inventory to quantify the current health of the urban forest and establish goals for a desired tree canopy in Tecumseh. And that study is underway and on track. Slide. Those first recommendations were all contained in 2010 and are being brought forward. Excuse me. These new initiatives have come out as a result of our current consultation and our benchmarking. And the first 2 actually go together, and it's a reorganization of the way trails are handled in the town. The first one is to classify multi-use trails that are within a park or connecting a park to the nearest right-of-way and used for the primary for recreation or fitness to be part of the park system and under the jurisdiction in terms of ongoing development, maintenance, repair, and replacement. So under the Director of Parks and Recreation. So trails that are within a park or connecting a park would be parks-related trails. On the other side of the coin, trails or other facilities located within the right-of-way, whether connected or separated from the traveled portion of the road. So it's sort of like the discussion we had at the waterfront trail, either beside the road or separated, used for recreation, fitness, or transportation, be part of the active transportation system and under the jurisdiction of the Director of Public Works and Environmental Services. So we're really sort of allocating the trails to where they belong. The ones that are for travel and are part of the road right-of-way are under Public Works. The ones that are in a park are under the Director of Parks. B3 is to create a new park classifications for Parkhead and Regional Park and to reclassify the parks as follows. This slide. So we've taken the existing list of parks and we've reclassified them into parkettes, specialized park, neighborhood, community, and regional parks. Next slide. And each of those types of those classifications of parks comes with some criteria. First of all, in terms of size or service radius, as they get bigger, the radius of service becomes bigger and the park size becomes bigger. But the amenities, it's important. What this setup does is it gives some direction to your parks department to, when they're designing a park, to include in it appropriate facilities for that particular classification of park. So for example, a community park would have such things as a washroom building, perhaps a splash pad, a perimeter walkway, but those would not normally be found in the neighborhood park. So as we move forward, there's all sorts of situations that exist now, but as we move forward, what we'll try to do is to put the proper facilities in the proper classification of park. So it provides some direction and some benchmarking for the staff as they move forward. As you can see, as you go from left to right, essentially the first part of each column is the same, but as you go down to the bottom, you add on things. So a neighborhood park would have a perimeter walkway where a specialized park probably wouldn't. A community park would have a splash pad and a washroom. A regional park would have all of the above, including a pavilion, but it would have a facility of regional interest, something that would attract people from outside of the area. The one sort of caveat we have in that is a parkette sometimes could include play equipment. And the reason we put that in there is you have some situations where you don't have a neighborhood park nearby. And if there's no neighborhood park nearby and there's a decent parkette, we wouldn't normally recommend playground equipment there, but we would if the neighborhood is not being adequately served by an adjacent neighborhood park. So there are instances where you might end up with a small piece of, a modest piece of playground equipment in a parkette, but typically not. Slide. Undertake a public open house to seek input on the development of Southfield Park, including a splash pad, washrooms, multi-use court, and a perimeter walkway. So this is essentially the first step is a public consultation with the particular neighborhood. We know that there's some special needs there, and we want to do a consultation with them to find out what sort of park facilities would best meet their needs in that situation. Complete the work in Lakewood Park. The master plan for Lakewood Park was done as a separate document, and it has been, largely implemented, but there's still a few things left to do. The recommendation here is to complete the work that was scheduled for Lakewood Park. That includes a pavilion, an electronic sign, outdoor washrooms, a splash pad, and an amphitheater to be built as part of Lakewood Park. The next one is to provide a community center in Ward 5, and that's an existing community center which has been sort of leased to the town, and the plan is to take ownership of that over the next period of time. Provide 10 pickleball courts at Lacoste Park. Provide 4 pickleball courts in Ward 5. Provide an artificial turf baseball fields at McAuliffe Park. Artificial turf fields are being recommended because of their increased playability. You can get on them quick after a rain. You can be playing on them almost immediately. And so you get much more playing time out of a artificial turf field. And so rather than add additional ball fields, what we're suggesting is that we should upgrade some of them to artificial turf to increase their playability. Continue to pursue development of the multi-use sportsplex as previously recommended in the 2010 Parks Master Plan. The actual recommendations in the 2010 plan have largely been satisfied. You were to do a study, you were to look for partners, and essentially you've done that, not entirely successfully because you don't have funding, but essentially that has been done. And so what we're saying is to continue with those steps, trying to line up a way to implement that the multi-use sportsplex. Slide. Provide artificial turf soccer at McAuliffe and Tecumseh Soccer. Redevelop Lacoste Park. This is another major facility that requires some upgrading. And at Lacoste, we're recommending that we refurbish the baseball complex, replace the stands and backstop, provide artificial turf, relamp the lights with energy efficient and good quality LED lights, and add capacity to the existing washroom facility. B14 is to provide a perimeter trail at some of the parks. Now, there are more parks than this that require perimeter trails. These are the ones that rise to the top in terms of need and can be accomplished within the period of the implementation of the plan. Optimist Park, Buster William Park, McAuliffe Park, and Southfield Park. We do note that from the survey that we did, that the number one activity that people benefit from in the town of LaSalle of Tecumseh, and this is almost the same wherever we go, is walking, jogging, bicycle, rollerblading. Those are the activities that the majority of people like to do, and we find that investing in perimeter parks, trails around the outside of a park, and you know, trails in the right of way as well are very beneficial to the satisfaction level for the people in the town. Monitor current usage and future demand to determine locations for additional splash pads. Splash pads, you'll remember from the chart of criteria that we showed you, would normally be located in community or regional parks. That was where we would like to see them, because they service a large number of people. You have a large investment in splash pads. And so to have a facility that by its nature has put parking available and services a large area is a better investment for that splash pad than tucking it away into a small area. However, there are times when it could go into a neighborhood park. That's really a matter of prudent decision-making at the time. And lastly, a new parks master plan. This was a review. The next plan should be done in about 5 years. 2025 should be a new master plan should be done for the town. Slide. In terms of how we initiate these recommendations, there are 4 streams of decisions that we're suggesting. Some of the recommendations, as found in the report, and they're actually listed or they're categorized in the report, should be approved and adopted by the municipality to be implemented. There's another group of recommendations that should be approved and established as policy for future planning. And that's what Councillor Altenoff was talking about in terms of getting that information to planning. The third category is there's some recommendations that should be approved and referred to the 5-year capital budget for future construction. And beyond that, there's more than you can probably fit into that 5-year budget. Some should be approved and referred to the second 5-year capital budget from the period 2027 to 2031. So all of the recommendations would be implemented and streamed in that way. And as I say in the report, they're actually identified as to which would be which. Slide. That's the end of our presentation. I would be happy to help you with any comments or questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bezier. Any questions or comments to Mr. Bezier on the presentation? Deputy Mayor Becchetti.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Paul, for the presentation, both Pauls there and the team. My question, there's twofold. One regarding the satisfaction regarding trails and nature was around 50%. To me, that's kind of low, but I'm thinking in the future with the Riverside Trail and the Les Bronze Trail, I believe that maybe might go up in percentage-wise, because to me, 50% tells me 1 out of 2 feel that we need to do a better job with trails. So I hope those in the coming future, would you argue that point to say that that should increase that satisfaction?
Yeah, well, there's 3 recommendations that speak to that. One would be the waterfront trail, certainly, and as you know, I sort of lived that one with you, getting that one through. But the other 2 recommendations are to look at opportunities in hydro corridors and in abandoned railway lines. You know, IRCA has done. We worked on a project for IRCA where we ran in an abandoned railway line a trail from Amherstburg to Essex. It was a wonderful project. We really enjoyed it. And those are the opportunities that really add substantially to your trail system. We've, when we did the Parks Master Plan in Lakeshore, we took advantage of the similar sorts of things, abandoned railways, and we've made some recommendations there. So we would like to see the amount of trail increased. But what you need to do is start your planning looking to those opportunities where you can get good runs, good long runs of trail without having to go through the disruption of neighborhoods, you know, and driveways and all that sort of stuff that we had to go through at Ganacho. But look for those opportunities, and I think those will pay big dividends in raising that level of satisfaction.
Okay, thank you. And the other point or question I had was regarding the sand volleyball courts. Are those popular in municipalities nowadays? I find, you know, with sand, It attracts critters. There's a lot of maintenance involved. You can't have staff there patrolling that. And you do have a lot of private businesses, like whether it be John Max or On the Green, that are already providing that kind of recreational service. So is that something that you see municipalities getting into, or is it just a comment you made because there's one that, you know, in the Maidstone Community Center that has it, but again, that's run, you know, by the club itself there?
The recommendation for that came purely out of the benchmarking, so it was not something that people were asking for. I think your intuition on that one is actually pretty accurate. It's not one that people were asking for, but it's one that showed up. You know, when we figure how many facilities a municipality should have per 1,000 people, that's how it showed up. I think, though, that sand volleyball is very much location driven. So if you happen to have a beach, you know, obviously you should have sand volleyball because it just makes good sense. If you don't have that facility, sort of making it artificially someplace is a little more difficult. I agree with you that the privately held facilities make up for some of that shortfall. I don't really see that as being a pressing need. What you end up with in Maidstone at that facility is probably going to take care of you moving forward. It's not something I would encourage you to spend a lot of time and effort on.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions or comments? The only comment I'd make, well, first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Becerra, and for certainly the report. It is very encouraging to see that at least we're meeting today's challenges in terms of facilities throughout the community. And I agree with the comments that the deputy brought forward as well. That was a question I was going to ask, and I don't recall getting any phone calls saying that we need a sand volleyball court, but I've certainly heard we need pickleball courts and we need soccer pitches and so forth. But the good news is that we at least now we don't have to rush into certain specifics, but we can build for the future as subdivisions come up and start, you know, putting in those more neighborhood parks in the area. The other one is on the trail system. I certainly agree. There are some opportunities like the hydro corridor, you know, before even subdivisions get built, where we can at least get a really nice east-west connection between the boundaries between Manning Road and Banwell and McAuliffe Woods and whatever new parkettes and so forth are going to be built in the south end, where we can build those parks close and tightly to those trails. And in particular, going forward with the L'Esperance Road, the next one from 42 to 22, which would be an ideal connection with the hydro lines and so forth, which would really take care of Ward 4 and make that connection right into Ward 5. So I'm pretty excited, you know, in terms of learning about that and so forth.
My suggestion, Mayor, would be the 2025 plan. You should spend the time between now and 2025 focusing on where trails make most sense. And the focus of the 2025 plan should include, as part of it, a real good review of where the trails can be laid out, exactly what you just suggested, how they can be connected to the existing parks, how new parks can be laid out nearer to the trails rather than separated from them. I think that will be a very, very good focus for the 2025 Parks Master Plan.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, then if I could have a motion that the strategic master plan for parks and recreation services five-year update be moved forward on the agenda for discussion and consideration, which we've done that. That did the discussion, but if we could have that report brought forward. Councilor Houston, Councilor Alton, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. So now if I can go back and grab that report. Okay, this report has moved forward on the, certainly on the agenda, so I want to thank you. Because I don't believe there's any further questions or comments at this particular time. And so we want to thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I will call the question though first. All in favor? Opposed, if any of that is carried. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Great report.
Thank you very much.
Your worship, may I ask if council would like to accept the recommendation in Mr. Anthony's report?
I believe that's what I was asking, but if I didn't make myself clear, that's, I apologize. Moved by Deputy Mayor Becchetti and Councilor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed, carried, that's unanimous. Okay. On to communications, members of council, we do have 7 pieces of communications to bring forward, to be received. Do I have a motion? Councilor Tonio, Councilor Houston, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Is there any pieces of communications that you would like to pull out and discuss? Yes, Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just item number 4, the rural broadband high-speed internet access. I know we briefly discussed it in our committee the other night, but I'm just wondering, I believe that we have in the past supported something very similar to this with our council, but would we forward this piece to our committee? I'm just wondering, it was discussed, but should this be something we forward to our committee for review? Would we support this here as, you know, it was discussed by the committee? I'm just not sure which.
Well, I would say at this stage, you know, I think we can either support certainly the recommendation. I mean, obviously, we all understand the importance of broadband, how important it is, the deficiencies we have in our rural, especially in the rural areas and in small towns. So I don't think there's anything out of the ordinary, but I think it continues to put the message forward. The good news is that the Minister of Infrastructure, Ontario, has now released, you know, from the 2021 budget, 2.8 billion that will be allocated to broadband and basically connecting all residents of Ontario by 2025. I think our committee had talked about that and in you know, pretty much at length, and that's pretty ambitious, number one. But at this stage, we don't know exactly what that means, but our region and others are waiting for ISPs to respond to a reverse auction on our region. And for reasons at this stage here, we're trying to get the minister to allow us to show the maps and to show the indication of all of the districts, but in particular of interest would be the county of Essex, which includes the town of Tecumseh. And the only thing I can tell you at this stage here, that if I had the map and I could share it with you, and I shared that at the committee, we'd all be very happy with what the auction and what they're proposing for the county. Now, throughout Ontario, some will be happy, some not so happy. That's all. But we should all support Essex, but it also sends a message to the province that we have to continue to push forward until all communities are connected. and that includes the 7 county municipalities that have deficiencies. As we know, even from our own Councilor Jobin, the difficulty she has in connecting with us and during the process. So my recommendation would be at this stage here, support Essex in the messaging. And again, it just keeps the pressure on the government to make sure that every home receives accessible and affordable broadband.
Okay. Well, I will move that we support this and also, I guess, provide a copy of it, to our committee on our next agenda as well.
Thank you. Support on Councilor Houston, Councilor Tonio. Thank you. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Also, if there's nothing further that we want to pull, we do have one item of communications, K1, which is from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, dated September 21st. That's online training on navigating conflict relationships as an elected official. That is scheduled for November the 9th. And the recommendation is to authorize the mayor and members of council be authorized to attend the November 9th to 10th, 2021 AMO's online training, navigating conflict relationship as an elected official at a cost of $200, subject to the town's professional development policy and funds available for the 2021 budget. Councilor Tonio moves, support Councilor Houston. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. Move on to committee minutes, members of council, Police Services Board meeting, September 9th. We have a motion that the September 9th minutes of the regular council as duplicated and delivered to the members be received as presented. Councilor Tonio, Councilor Altenhoff. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed, carried. Town of Tecumseh Business Improvement Area, September 15th. Motion to receive the Tecumseh Business Improvement Area Board minutes as duplicated and delivered to the members. Councilor Houston, move. Support. Councilor Altenhoff. On those minutes, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Move on to reports. The next report from the Chief Administrative Officer, our CAO, National Day of Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th. But I'd like to call upon our Director of People and Culture, Ms. Bonici, to bring this report forward.
Thank you, Mayor McNamara. Members of council, good evening.
Good evening.
As you know, the Government of Canada recently passed the legislation marking September 30 as a day to recognize and commemorate the history and legacy of residential schools as part of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. As of June 2021, the new legislation makes September 30 a general holiday under the Canada Labour Code. The town of Tecumseh will also recognize September 30 each year as a holiday for all town of Tecumseh employees. And in addition, we will also encourage staff to take the day to learn more about Canada's assimilation policies, including residential schools and the resulting intergenerational trauma caused to Indigenous peoples. Also, for your awareness, council, in recognition of National Truth and Reconciliation, the town's Parks and Recreation Department will tie 215 pieces of orange ribbon along the railings of the Lakewood Park North Boardwalk. And these will remain tied to the railings over the weekend. Tecumseh Council has recognized the importance of this day to honor First Nations, Inuit, and Métis survivors, their families, and communities. And in conclusion, administration is recommending that report CAO-2021-15 entitled National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, September 30 be received. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bonici. Any questions or comments? I do have a comment. I really want to commend the Parks Department administration on delivering on the ribbons. I read that report and I shared that with my wife at dinner, and she thought that is a proper way for our community to signal that we care, we understand, and we support that every child matters, and in particular, the 215 that has been, tugging at everybody's heart over the months that's been done. So I want to commend the Parks Department for that thought, and I think it's maybe an opportunity, when we do our call out to the community, is to maybe take a short stroll in Lakewood Park and take a walk down that boardwalk, and as a reminder of how important it is for us not only to remember, but also for forgiveness of the transgressions that were done to our Indigenous population. So I certainly want to extend my thanks for that.
Absolutely.
Yes, Mr. Anthony.
I just wanted to pass on to the mayor and members of council that the thought for this certainly was one of our young staff, Katarina Toms, who is a seasonal program and events assistant. And likewise, it was her idea earlier this year to have the rocks painted at Lakewood Park for the Indigenous community. So certainly great job. And we're very proud of our staff, both our seasoned veterans and our young staff all make a commitment to the community.
Well, please extend on behalf of council and certainly the senior management team our thanks for their thoughts and certainly goodwill and for this gesture. Yes, Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to administration. Yeah, I would echo the kind thoughts and especially from Parks on this, and encourage perhaps in the future to allow or welcome maybe some of our residents would like to be involved with tying up ribbons or anything of that type. Again, as a gesture for like you said, healing, the forgiveness, and showing the willingness to participate in such events to bring us all together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Altenhoff. Certainly any future or any comments that need to be forthcoming. Again, for me, from the heart, I think it's just a wonderful town gesture, and from our town staff on that. Okay, so
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
if I could just very quickly, just in response to Councillor Altenhoff, we had some discussions, and as you can see, this report has just come forward, and of course, 30th is on Thursday. But there was considerable discussion around, as this moves forward, how the town can more proactively demonstrate its consideration of the day, public engagement, and so on. So we certainly will take Councillor Altenhoff's comments seriously, and then I think we'll start looking at, how can this become a proper recognition as we move forward over the years. So, but for a beginning, we were quite proud of what came forward, and very pleased with the outcome. But more to come on this, I think, as we move forward.
Yeah, I'm sure that our namesake Tecumseh would be very proud of his town. All right, on the motion, it's can't remember, duly moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti, and do I have support? Councillor Houston. Further comments? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, move on to corporate services. Our clerk, local government week. It's here again. So I call upon our Director of Corporate Services, our clerk, Ms. Moy, to summarize the report and bring the recommendations forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, 2021 Local Government Week is back. It'll be virtual this year, but it is back. So we will be doing much like we have in the past. We want to find ways that we can help provide a campaign aimed at celebrating the important role municipal government plays in shaping our communities and engaging our youth in the community. And to that end, we are once again going to be offering tours of the town hall, fire and OPP stations, albeit virtually, but the students will be able to interact and engage in a virtual environment along those tours. Again, we're going to be offering some activities such as letters to the mayor, which are always very popular, and trivia contests. For the older students, we're also going to be encouraging them to do a scavenger hunt. So going around town and identifying certain landmarks. So encouraging them to get out and see the town and learn more about the unique features here in our community. So we are asking that council once again proclaim local government week. This year it will be October 18th to the 22nd, and that administration support of planning events and activities for the youth, as well as posting those activities on our social media and delivering those out to the schools, and that the schools be invited to those virtual tours this year.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments? Motion moved by Deputy Mayor Becchetti, supported by Councillor Altenhoff. All in favor? Oh, go ahead, Deputy
Thank
Mayor.
you, Your Worship. Just to follow up, Laura, are there still going to be the coloring contests, like the mayor for the day, deputy mayor for the day?
There's going to be the letter to the mayor. The the coloring contest is being deferred in light of similar events that are being planned in conjunction with the anniversary celebrations for the town.
Okay, so you're eliminating the deputy mayor for the day as I've done in the past. For this year.
So there's always opportunities for first and second runner-ups to be able to be selected coming out of the letters campaign.
Okay, very good. And the other thing I encourage, if staff can send that out ASAP, because that way the staff and the teachers will get it, say, even this week, that way they can plan for the 18th. And I know they will look forward to the mayor visiting, and now being Zoom, I think he can hit more schools, more classrooms with this presentation through sharing the screen and kind of do, like you say, a virtual question and answer. And I invite any other members of council that are able to join at whatever time those classrooms do the virtual meetings. I think that would be welcome and kind of facilitate easier transition during this COVID pandemic, since we can't really have speakers in the schools right now.
Absolutely. Good points. All right, no further questions or comments. Been duly moved and supported. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, Parks and Recreation Services, we've dealt with that. Move on to Planning and Building Services. We have a zoning bylaw amendment condition of severance. That's application B 1321, 135 Shane Street. So I'll call upon our Director of Planning and Building Services, summarize the report and recommendation. Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be doing this one. Sean, if you could turn it to attachment 1, please. So
Is Dave.
while
I think.
he's, Dave, if you could please turn to attachment 1. While he's getting that, just let council know that through this report, we're requesting the scheduling of a public meeting. There it is. That pertains to a property that's on the west side of Shane Street. It's roughly 22,000 square feet in area, and it's currently occupied by a single unit dwelling, along with a 2,485 square foot detached accessory structure just to the rear of the single unit dwelling that was once used as an automobile body repair shop. Attachment 2, please, Dave. So this attachment shows that the subject property outlined in red, it's within a neighborhood that's predominantly residential, low density residential, in fact. And there's a commercial node to the north along Riverside Drive at the intersection of West Bronx and Shane Street. But the majority of the surrounding area is low density residential. Attachment 3, please. On August 30th of this year, the Committee of Adjustment gave provisional consent to the creation of a severed lot outlined in red, having a frontage of 16.8 meters or 55 feet in frontage and an area of roughly 868 square meters or 9,300 square feet. And the retained lot, which contains the existing house and the detached accessory structure. The subject property, as shown on attachment 4, is designated residential in the Tecumseh official plan. And on attachment 5, it's illustrated that the zoning is a residential R3-3 category, which permits a range of residential uses, including single, semis, and townhouses. But it also continues to permit that automobile body repair garage that was once occupying the subject property. As a condition of the consent, the committee established that the property was to be rezoned to remove the automobile body repair garage as a permitted use. The owner agreed to this condition, but he also added that he'd like to replace that with a limited range of commercial uses that would occupy approximately 500 square feet of the existing detached structure. And the types of proposed uses he's considering are general professional offices, a pet groomer, a baker, chef, caterer, a childcare provider, and a yoga studio. He'd also like council to consider allowing for a maximum lot coverage of 40% on the severed lot as opposed to the existing permitted lot coverage of 30%. So the proposed amendment is to rezone the retained lot from R3-3 to a site-specific R3 zone that would eliminate the automobile body repair garage and add a limited range of commercial uses within 500 square feet of the existing 2,500 square foot detached structure, and to rezone the severed lot from an R3-3 to revised R3-3 to permit the 40% lot coverage. The proposed rezoning is consistent with the provincial policy statement. It's generally in conformity with the County of Essex official plan and the Town of Tecumseh official plan. There's a specific policy in the Town of Tecumseh official plan under 10.12 that's called existing land uses and buildings, and this allows council to consider rezoning the property to permit uses that are more compatible than the currently permitted use. And so that's what the owner is requesting, that the automobile body repair garage be replaced with those limited range of commercial uses that I mentioned earlier. So at this time, we're requesting that council authorize the scheduling of the public meeting. And following the public meeting, hearing from interested stakeholders, we'll bring back a report to council with a recommendation at a later meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffries. Any questions or comments? The only question I have, Mr. Jeffrey, is I didn't even realize that, auto shop and surrounded by a residential area. I mean, that's a bit, I could see neighbors complaining. But having said that, I know there's commercial at the north end, but there's a little commercial node there, but it's kind of deep into a residential area. Now, you alluded to certain businesses that would be allowed, a professional business, and people, if there was an accountant there or something like that, I don't think that'd be kind of an issue. But others, like for what sort of can it be put under site plan in terms of any type of, if there's a lot of traffic in and out or noise emitting? I could see the body shop being noisy. And so forth. Could somebody put in a woodworking shop back there? Because I could see the general public being maybe a little concerned. I say, but you said it meets in terms of what you're trying or what the owner's trying to do conforms with every, the county, the town, and certainly provincial policy. I mean, just some thought behind that, and
Those are good points, Mr. Mayor. Our understanding is that the surrounding neighbors are thrilled that the permitted use of an automobile body garage is going to go away forever. And the types of uses that the owner is hoping to replace that with are of a home occupation nature. And they're really restricted, proposed to be restricted to only 500 square feet of that building. So the range of the uses is restricted as the scope and the area that can be occupied by them. The public meeting will give us an opportunity to hear from surrounding neighbors and we listen to any concerns they might have with respect to some of the permitted uses. And that range of uses might change as a result of the public meeting, the comments that we hear there. But our initial reaction to the uses that he's proposing are that they are compatible with the surrounding area, we think they're appropriate for a replacement for that existing automobile body repair garage.
okay. All right, thank you. Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And through you, yeah, I think I would echo some of the points you raised, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for that. But I recognize that the report really is just asking for, a public meeting to allow, kind of stakeholder input, which I think is at this point, I support this. I hear from Mr. Jeffrey, I could understand that the neighboring residents probably would be very happy to see an auto body repair shop go away.
Yeah.
And replaced by, like you said, more professional type services, which are quieter in their nature. So I think that's a very good thing. But nonetheless, the report is requesting, public input, and I think that's very much suitable and appropriate. So look forward to hearing that input from those residents. And this is their good opportunity to provide that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions or comments? Then I need a motion to call upon a Director of Planning and Building Services to summarize the report and bring the recommendations forward. Moved by Councillor Altenhoff, supported by Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Public Works, Environmental Services, a disaster mitigation adaptation fund. I think this would be round 4. I think 2021 intake. So Mr. Bartnick, if you want to summarize your report and recommendations.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So the report before you today is recommending that administration be authorized to submit an application to the federal government under the DMAF fund, which is the 2020 intake or intake 4. And in 2018, the government of Canada launched DMAF, committing $2 billion over 10 years to invest in structural and natural infrastructure projects in varying communities. An additional 1.375 billion was also infused over 12 years, which would help fund the 2021 intake. So DMAF will cover up to 40% of funding. They've changed things up from the previous intakes. They now have 2 funding streams. They have a small scale projects, which are projects between 1 million and 20 million, with an application deadline of November 15th. And they also have the large scale projects that are greater than 20 million, with an application deadline of October 15th. So administration, as part of this report, is recommending an application of bundled projects under the large scale stream. And that would be relevant to the town's strategic priorities, identified within the town's flood mitigation strategy, identified within the town's storm drainage master plan, projects that are identified in the town sanitary sewer model update, which is in draft form and hopefully brought to council shortly. And based on the eligibility and merit criteria listed in the program. So Dave, if you can pull up attachment 1 for me, please. So the bundled projects are depicted in this map, and they consist of a sanitary relief sewer on Riverside Drive, and that would be in the St. Clair Beach area, fronting Beach Grove and heading west of Kensington. A sanitary relief sewer on Green Valley, St. Thomas, and Dillon Drive. Another sanitary relief sewer on Lanou Street and Lemire Street. And then a storm component consisting of a storm sewer diversion on Lanou and Lemire, as well as a stormwater storage facility in Buster Ream Park. So these projects were strategically selected as they provide benefit and relief to the greatest number of residents. And we really tried to target those areas where historic basement flooding has been previously reported, not only in 2016 and 17, but more recently in July of 2021 as well. The financial implications. So the total bundled costs are 28.7 million. The federal component, if we were successful, would be 40% at 11.48 million, with the town at 60% at 17.22 million. So if successful, the project would be incorporated as part of the annual Public Works Capital Works Plan, with the DMAF program timelines for the project being between 2022 and 2032. So we have a good 10 years plus to complete these projects. That's the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions? I have one, and when I looked at the report, I thought it was well done, and it looks like it's tackling those trouble spots that we've had, you know, in particular in 2016, 17, and even just recently, the one in July in those areas. The only one, Mr. Bardnick, that I thought that I think it's a problem child too for us is the Shane area, where you know, there seems to be a lot of attention put there, and if we look at the area, it's pretty low and so forth. Just you know, your opinion, does it make sense to look at that particular area as well? I know that the future upgrades of the L'Esperance Road pumping station is you know, on the purview, and but Shane Street, would it make sense there to have something because they've had a fair amount of flooding in that area as well?
Thank you, Your Worship. Very good question. You know, Shane Street is one of the, if not the lowest, one of the lowest areas in town, and we definitely do get a lot of complaints and concerns during some of the heavier rainfall events. The sanitary sewer model update that's currently underway has identified some troubled areas. Obviously, the ones that we brought forward in the report and a few elsewhere. Charlene Street would be one, a few locations on L'Esperance, I believe maybe a short section on Arlington as well. But we felt that those were kind of smaller in nature and could be kind of grouped together as part of a larger, you know, road reconstruction, storm, sanitary water projects. When it comes to Shane Street, it really didn't identify as a problem area on the sanitary component. And I think where you're going to see larger relief in that area for flooding is when some of the improvements on the L'Esperance Road pumping station and and that kind of secondary trunk facility on St. Pierre get installed. You'll see significant improvements there. You'll still see some surface and road flooding, but I think the hope is that the duration of that flooding would be reduced.
Okay. So then, from what I'm hearing, is that DMAF 5 might be an opportunity for the Charlene and the rest. Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I really don't have any questions, but when there's an opportunity for us to, really get a 40% discount on some of these large projects, right? I think it's wise for us to, put these together, and these ones here will have a huge impact, right, on our systems. So, hopefully, with the election over, we've got a sitting member, and as he came through on, DMAP 3, he'll be successful in DMAP 4 for us as well. So I'm in support of this.
So then you're prepared to move the report as presented.
Absolutely.
Councillor Altanoff, support. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. All right, get the application written. Okay, report to amend the engineer's report. That's a Curtis Drain, sorry. Call upon the director to summarize the report and then bring that recommendation forward. Mr. Bartnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of this report is to advise council of the proposed amendments to the previously adopted engineer's report for the Curtis Drain, as well as provide information on recent changes to the Drainage Act. So council gave the third and final reading to bylaw 2021-14 that provides for the repair and improvement to the Curtis Drain. Since that time, the engineer's report that was adopted had identified 4 gas services that were to be relocated prior to the drainage work commencing. Enbridge had advised that the cost would be approximately $200,000 and advised of a recent court decision, Union Gas versus the Corporation of the Township of Norwich, where the franchise agreement would be applied as opposed to Section 26 of the Drainage Act. And the implications of the franchise agreement is when the municipality triggers these works, the cost share percentage is 65% gas and 35% municipality. So this was confirmed with the town solicitor. So as a result, the drainage engineer determined that modifications could be made where only one gas service would need to be relocated, which reduced the gas service relocation costs and the cost to the town. Dobbin Engineering provided correspondence outlining the proposed amendments to the drainage report, as well as an amended Curtis Drain report itself. And on June 30th of this year, there were some amendments to the Drainage Act that came into effect under the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act 2020, which is formerly Bill 97. So Section 84(1) of the Drainage Act, as well as OREG 500-21, they both speak to and provide the process on how to amend and approve the amendments to the engineer's report. This is, we have consulted with OMAFRA through this process because the law has been recently adopted. And it's our understanding that we may be the first in Ontario with trying to amend a report of this nature. So in order to approve the amendments to the engineer's report, the OREG requires that the council of the municipality shall approve the revised design as an addendum to the bylaw, assess any additional fees or expenditures of the engineer in accordance with the assessment schedule, and provide notice of the addendum to the bylaw to all persons who own property that may be affected by the drainage works. So the town's cost on this report, we do have roughly about $11,000 for works under Section 26 of the Act related to water main relocation, and $17,500 for the town's cost share, being 35% for the relocation of the one gas service. So there's no other landowners that have been affected by the revision or the amendment to the report, other than the town and Enbridge. And if adopted today, the next steps would be to provide notice of the amended report to everybody in the drainage area, prepare the tender documents, and move forward to construction. That's the end of my presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions or comments? So there's a recommendation on the Curtis Drain, moved by Deputy Mayor McKetty, support Council Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you, Mr. Bartnick. And finally, Public Works, water main anode program inspection and replacement tender award. So I'll call upon our director to summarize the report and recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ductile iron and cast iron water main pipe make up about 20% of the town's total water mains. Due to continual corrosion problems and high failure rates, the town had started an anode protection program back in 2015. And this program has significantly reduced the number of annual water main breaks over the last number of years. The work plan for 2021 was to inspect the condition of those anodes at each of the test stations, determine the remaining life expectancy of those anodes, and to replace the anodes where required replacement. So a tender call was advertised on August 19th. There was only one tender submission received on September 8th, and it was from CP Systems. The project is over the $200,000 budget by just under $60,000, so it's $59,692. We recommend that the additional cost be funded from the Water Main Reserve Fund. CP Systems has completed work for the town in the past with great success, and if approved tonight, the works would commence immediately. They're hoping to try and get these works completed in the next number of months.
Okay, so recommendation to adopt the report. Councillor Altenhoff, Councillor Houston. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Madam Clerk, bylaws.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first bylaw this evening is bylaw number 2021-73, which is a bylaw to amend the town's zoning bylaw 1746 for those lands in the former town of Tecumseh located at 1441 Shawnee Road, as heard at the public meeting at the last meeting of council. We have bylaw number 2021-74, which is a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw 85-18, which is in relation to the public meeting at the last meeting of council for 5074 North Talbot Road. And we also have bylaw number 2021-75, which provides for the amendments to bylaw 2021-14 regarding the repair and the improvements to the Curtis Drain, as reported earlier this evening by Public Works. We're respectfully asking for first and second reading of these three bylaws, and if appropriate, third and final reading.
All right, on two readings, moved by Councillor Tonio and supported by Councillor Houston. Any questions, comments? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to Ms. Moy, just on page 309 of the agenda, which is reflected in the PDF version available online, as well as on the there's two attachments to bylaw 2021-75. The second one, I'm just trying to clarify. It says being a bylaw to provide an amendment to bylaw 2114, being a bylaw to provide the repair and improvements to the 75. Can you just clarify? Is it supposed to be 75 or something? Is that a placeholder for something else?
Apologies, the 75 should say Curtis Drain. We'll make that correction before the bylaw sign. That should say Curtis Drain.
Okay, because it seems, yeah, like I could be wrong in this, but the pages 307, 308 seem to be basically kind of a bit of a reflection, perhaps of 309, 310, just with that 75, maybe making reference to the wrong thing. But I'm glad it'll be addressed accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, so first and two readings, and then on C would be as amended. All in favor? Oppose? Carried. And third and final reading. Deputy Mayor Bichetti and Council Tonio, all in favor? Oppose, if any, that is carried.
Your worship, we also have bylaw number 41 on the agenda this evening. This is the bylaw 41 that was inadvertently added to the September 14th agenda and given third and final readings. So we're asking if council would please repeal third and final readings until such time as we've had opportunity to hold the court of revision on this matter.
So just basically a deferral.
Yeah, just repealing of the third and final reading.
Okay, repeal. Councillor Houston, Deputy Mayor Bichetti, all in favor? Oppose, if any, that's carried. Thank you. Any unfinished business, members of council? New business? I just want to commend our Public Works Department, just kind of a shout out to them. I know we received about 110 millimeters of rain over a period of time with no impact to the municipalities, but it's good to keep all of the equipment up and running and the drains and as cleared. So to Mr. Bartnick, just extend our thanks to Public Works Department. All right, no further new business, then a motion to confirm the proceedings of our meeting this evening. Councilor Tonio, Councilor Altenhoff, all in favor? Oppose, if any, that's carried. Any notices of motion? None. And our next meeting will be Tuesday, October 12th. 6:30 would be a public council meeting on the McLean Hergot Drain and Water Department Bridge. And 7 p.m. will be our regular council meeting. No further business. Adjournment's in order. Councillor Houston and Councilor Tonio, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Members of council, I want to bid you good night. Thank you for indulging, as well as administration and those who are viewing from the comforts of home. Thank you for joining us this evening. Until we meet again, stay safe and bid you good night.